And welcome. Today, me and Sean from JT is Reborn will be doing a double feature of the first two Godzilla movies in the Millennium series. And those of course being Godzilla 2000 and Godzilla versus Megaguirus. If anybody calls this Megaguirus, I will virtual bitch slap them in the balls. God damn, James Rolfe really had a negative impact on Godzilla movies for me sometimes.
No, I think he did. Well, you can say some things he said, but a lot of things he did have a good positive thing because he did introduce a lot of people to Godzilla. He was very informative about the series, and he helped a lot of people go out and watch the movies after the fact. So he did spawn a lot of Godzilla fans. And I remember when that series first aired, that I watched it like every day. It was a good one because I was a fan of James Rolfe. I still am to this day. He doesn't treat his coworkers like shit. I'm like nostalgia critic.
I don't like Nostalgia Critic.
What?
I don't like Nostalgia Critic.
Yeah, after what I heard, man, that was some shady shit. But we're not here to talk about that. Let's talk about these fucking movies.
I'd rather not. Actually, yes, I would, but gotta get the stuff ready.
Yeah.
So, yes, indeed. We're going to start off with our histories with both of these movies. So, my history with Godzilla 2000. Not counting Godzilla 1998. Godzilla 2000 was the first of the actual Godzilla series that I ever saw. Which does make sense because it came out 3 years after my date of birth. And I caught it on TV. Actually, I think it was playing right after G98. So I caught it on TV. And oh my god, did this movie blow my fucking balls off. I love the living shit out of Godzilla 2000. And I always remembered, here, let me resituate my camera here. I always remembered this movie because Godzilla has a very distinctive design in this movie. He fights a very distinctive monster. And overall, I think this movie, to me at the time, was always very distinctive because it just really stuck out to me as something that I really wanted to see again. But it kind of escaped me for a little while. I caught the last 5 minutes of the movie on TV again when I was living with my dad. But I didn't see it again until I was about 10 or 11 years old when my mom started using Netflix. This was back when you could rent a movie from Netflix and it would show up in the mail.
Huh? I wonder if they still do that, like the DVD service.
I think they still do, but it's not as used as just a streaming service. But whatever. And this was at this time I knew how to use the computer, so I had looked up Godzilla 2000 and I realized that's the one that I saw all those years ago. And so I asked my mom to rent it. It took 5 weeks for it to show up in the mail for some reason.
Yeah, fucking Netflix.
But watched this movie. It blew me away once again, of course. And I watched this movie again and 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 again. I freaking loved this movie. For the longest time, this movie was considered to be my favorite Godzilla movie. It has, of course, since then changed, but this is one of my favorite Godzilla movies of all time. I absolutely love this movie. I think it's a great, great, great film. Not just a Godzilla movie, but a great movie in general. And as for Godzilla vs. Megaguirus, kind of the same way. I found this movie through learning about Godzilla and reading about Godzilla. So I found out about Godzilla vs. Megaguirus. And not long after I saw Godzilla 2000, I asked my mom, could you rent Godzilla vs. Megaguirus? So she did, and it showed up. And when I saw the movie, I actually really liked it. Because it was more of the type of Godzilla that I wanted to see. I wanted to see I wanted the Godzilla with the red atomic breath because at the time I hated the blue atomic ray. I wanted to see more of the red atomic breath. Um, so I also love Godzilla's deeper, longer roar, and I love the music for this movie. I really liked this movie when I was a kid. I thought it was a really, really fun time. And as I grew up rewatching Megaguirus, I still do like the film, but mainly just as a guilty pleasure. I have come to realize that Megaguirus is a pretty fucking flawed film. And actually, objectively, I'd have to agree. It's easily the worst of the Millennium series, but I still do enjoy the film. So, Shawnee boy, what's your histories with these movies?
Now, Godzilla 2000, I remember seeing ads for this one on TV back in the year 2000 when it came out, and I didn't get the chance to see it on DVD. And like, no matter what Godzilla movie you threw at me, I still found some enjoyment in it. And then this one I liked when I first saw it, but upon like rewatching it, like in my 2014 Godzilla review series, and then like rewatching it again now, this is one of my least favorite Godzilla movies. It's like I struggle to sit through it. I don't like the look of Godzilla in this film. I think the Millennium suit is one of the weakest designs. It's too, I guess, like pointy. It looks plasticky. His mouth looks like he's getting a facelift, and the dorsal fins are way too huge and out of proportion. It's just not a visually appealing looking Godzilla. A lot of the special effects, which, I know a lot of the old films are like practical. They use like models and that, but I find that far more visually appealing than garbage CGI. Like, there's a lot of shitty CGI in this movie. There's some decent masking effects, like, mixed effects, but
There's also some really
a lot
shitty
of it
green
just,
screen effects in this movie too.
oh, the green screen effects are awful in this movie. And, like, sometimes I can get a good laugh out of that. This time, some of it was, like some of it I could laugh at. Other parts I'm just like, that just doesn't look good. I just don't like the look of this Godzilla, and I feel like that really, like, is hurting the movie for me, the way he looks in this film. I think it's just an ugly looking Godzilla. Like the face, it's the head. It's the face that really does it for me. I think that is a hideous looking facial design for Godzilla. Definitely one of my least favorites in the entire series. But yeah, so I saw this one when I was younger. I liked it when I was little. Rewatching it, it's one of my least favorite. It has some pacing problems. Not really very interesting characters, except for the one guy who yells Godzilla, and then he dies. The monster battles are very, like, they're not that good. It's like a lot of them really do drag on. They're just kind of standing around doing nothing. The musical score is lacking, except for the classic Akara Ifukube theme.
I'll give you that. This movie doesn't have the greatest music score, but I don't think it's bad.
It's like this guy composed it. He did for Space Godzilla, and he did for the anime trilogy, I think. And I could be wrong. Somebody could correct me in the comments, but it just wasn't doing it for me on all fronts. Like, I just rewatched this movie right before we recorded, that ranking of the Heisei series, because I wanted to have a refresher on it. But I'm just not that big a fan of it. I do like the ending. I do like Orga. Orga is a cool looking kaiju, but yeah. So that's my brief history on that one. We'll save it for like more of the discussion portion. But Godzilla vs. Megaguirus, I didn't see this one until the Sci-Fi Channel aired it, because I believe they did something back in the early 2000s leading up to Final Wars, where they had like a marathon of Godzilla films that they were airing for the first time. And I watched Megaguirus. It still had this, ugly looking Godzilla suit. But it was one of those things where I'm just like, okay, it's a Godzilla movie. I can find some enjoyment in it. And this one I enjoy a little bit more than Godzilla 2000. I think a lot of it has to do with the music, too. The musical score is really great in this film.
Yeah.
The musical score is excellent. This composer, she came back, like, really, like, from this point onward, the music in all the Millennium series is pretty good, with the exception of Godzilla 2000. Because I know you're not the biggest GMK fan, but that musical score is awesome. So, I can play that in the piano I used to be able to. Yeah, I can listen to that score. Like, and this one too is like do 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 do, and it's a very memorable score. The score is great in this film. So, but yeah, I saw this one. There's some really graphic scenes in this one too. Like the part where the Megaguirus just like the cat murders somebody graphically. I'm like, Jesus Christ, is this some Japanese like horror film? Like that That was awesome. Megaguirus is kind of a weak opponent. Like I don't really feel like Megaguirus even stands remotely a chance. I'm like, Orga at least looked imposing.
I'll get to her when I get to the cons for Megaguirus.
There are some funny moments in this film, but there's also some shitty ones too. But we'll get to the pros and cons when we get to them. So that's just my brief history of it, and then we'll get into that after you cover the plot of 2000. We'll talk about that one, and then we'll cover the plot of Megaguirus, and then talk about that one.
Well, we're gonna get to the plots of both movies before we get to the pros. So the plot of Godzilla 2000 is the film. I don't think it's really stated if this movie is a direct sequel to the original Gojira, or now that I think about it, it might pull a problem that I have with the next movie, whereas Godzilla never really died. But I don't get that vibe from this movie, so let's just say it is a direct sequel. It just doesn't say that. So Godzilla is somehow returned, and he is a literal force of nature to Japan. He shows up whenever he wants, and all the humans can really do is just try to stay out of his way when he's doing his thing. So the Godzilla Prediction Network, or GPN for short, see, that is how you do a UNGCC type thing in a Godzilla movie, and you make it easy to pronounce.
Exactly. Some of these names are just like, this name, this really long name, this really long name. G-Force is fine. That one's easy. G-Force. There you go.
So the GPN is an independent network that functions to study Godzilla and try to predict where he will make landfall in Japan. Which actually, that is a very admirable task to do, and it kind of makes me wonder why this network doesn't have more members to it. But whatever. Adam is live. Oh well, you have to skip out on that. Sorry. Anyway, so meanwhile, while this is going on, the scientists of the CCI, the Crisis Control Intelligence, which I kind of just wish it was called the Crisis Control Center, but whatever, find a 60 million year old giant rock, UFO looking thing. Huh?
It looks like a giant piece of shit.
Flying whale turd. Deep in the Japanese trench, they find this thing, and as the CCI attempt to raise it to the surface so it can be studied further, it takes off to the surface under its own power. Godzilla arrives in a village in Japan and enters a battle with the JSDF, a great entertaining battle, who are equipped with what they refer to as powerful full metal missiles, which leads to admittedly a pretty cringy line of dialogue from this movie. I guarantee it'll go through Godzilla like crap through a goose.
And some of the cheesy dub lines I do get a good kick out of, like "See you later, baby." Or
hang on, we'll get to that. We'll get to that a little later. But
all right.
However, the UFO appears, which is searching for some type of genetic information that it needs, that only Godzilla seems to possess. And in one of my favorite scenes of the entire Godzilla franchise, it enters a brief skirmish with Godzilla. At first, it just seems like they're doing a staring contest. Then the UFO fires some type of concussive beam at Godzilla, drives him back, and drives him into the water. Then Godzilla shows up, and as the UFO recharges its own beam, Godzilla charges up his atomic ray. And with a quick flip of the head, he lets it fly, revealing to us the first time when he's not enhanced by Fire Rodin's power, unleashing for the first time an orange atomic breath. And it is glorious.
Not counting Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 1974 because that was Mechagodzilla.
Yeah, that was Mechagodzilla. Not to mention it was yellow there, but whatever. So Godzilla is successful in blowing away a lot of the rocky exterior to the UFO, revealing it has a blue inside, seemingly.
Mm-hmm.
So it drives Godzilla underwater, and then it lands elsewhere to try to replenish its solar power. And Yuji Shinoda, who is the founder of GPN Center, um, who has a vendetta against the head of the CCI, whose name is Mitsuo Katagiri, played by Hiroshi Abe, who also played the main villain of Orochi the Eight-Headed Dragon.
I never saw that.
I haven't either, but I've seen a couple reviews of it. Anyway, he has a vendetta against him. He asks to use the CCI scanning equipment to study a skin sample off of Godzilla, and he discovers that Godzilla is able to regenerate from injury, uh, with no limit, and he names it in the Japanese version. He names it Organizer G1, but in the American version, it's named Regenerator G1. I prefer Regenerator G1, to be 100%
Yeah, I guess I
honest.
do too.
Organizer
Honestly, I don't really
G1 just doesn't roll off the tongue nearly as well as Regenerator G1. Not to mention, Regenerator makes more sense. He's regenerating his cells. He's not organizing his cells. But they discovered that Godzilla can heal from injury quite quickly too. One photo of scar tissue, or one photo of the damaged tissue, shows heavy signs of scar damage, whereas the second photo, which was taken only 5 hours later, is completely clear. For a creature of Godzilla's size, that's quite a quick healing speed. So they discover, well, if Godzilla can do this, maybe we can try to replicate this for human use and revolutionize modern medicine. It's an admirable thing to do. I like that these scientists, they don't want to just exploit Godzilla for their own purposes. They want to let him do his own thing. But any possibility of something Godzilla just leaves behind, they'll try to salvage, and they'll see what they can make use of it. They're not just stereotypical military engineers who just want to use something for their own gain. I do like that about these characters.
They're not just, as Mickey Sargus would say, men, you stupid men. All you ever want to do is kill it.
Yeah. So anyway, the UFO frees itself from the JSDF's attempt to contain it. It lands head up in a river, and they try to tie it down with cables, but it snaps free of the cables and flies off toward the city. It also sheds its rocky exterior, revealing a smooth blue shiny surface underneath, and it doesn't really look like the stereotypical UFO. It's not a flying saucer. It's kind of,
yeah, it's like a flying oval something. I don't know.
I don't know. It is certainly a unique shape.
It's the shadow of a deformed scrotum. That's what I like to call it.
It frees itself from the JSDF and heads to Shinjuku. That's it. It heads toward Shinjuku, and after landing atop the Tokyo Opera City Tower, it begins to drain all the files about Godzilla from Tokyo's master computers. And it also begins to alter the oxygen content of the surrounding atmosphere. CCI then attempts to destroy the UFO using explosive charges. However, Shinoda, in an attempt to find out more about the aliens, gets inside Tokyo City Tower, is nearly caught in the blast. However, he does survive, and he joins the rest of the humans on a nearby rooftop. Another one of my favorite lines in the movie: "Nice try, asshole." to Katagiri.
That was pretty funny. Or like the other one is great Caesar's ghost.
I'll get to that, and I'll get to that later.
Okay.
So, almost in response, the UFO then begins to broadcast its message of invasion and creating a new empire on Earth. And Shinoda reveals that the aliens are after the regenerative properties that are contained inside of Godzilla's DNA, so that they may use it for themselves to reform their own bodies. We don't really get to see what the aliens inside the ship really look like. Which
that is a bit different. I'll give it that.
some
Normally we have like a human face.
some may say that's really infuriating. I actually really don't mind because it it kind of it makes them more mysterious. But a small part of me can't deny that. Yeah, I would have liked to see like one fleeting glance of what the aliens look like, because at least that'd be something.
In Final Wars, or the simians, or the cockroach people, or something. You know what I mean? Something
So
like
anyway, Godzilla then shows up in Shinjuku and again battles with the UFO. And the UFO proceeds to absorb some of Godzilla's DNA, which the aliens use to reform. Oh, I guess they do. The aliens use to reform themselves outside of the spaceship as the gigantic Millennium. So I guess this is what the aliens look like.
I don't know. It's weird.
However, the Millennium is unable to control Godzilla's genetic info, and it mutates into the monster we know as Orga, which will be the last original kaiju until Monster X in Final Wars.
And then the Muto. Although Monster X is a form of Ghidorah, but you know.
Godzilla recovers and brings down the UFO before engaging in a battle with Orga. However, having absorbed the regenerative properties of Godzilla's DNA, Orga is highly resistant to injury. Godzilla blows off multiple chunks of Orga during the fight, and Orga just seemingly regenerates from these within seconds. Orga retaliates, and he proceeds to extract more of Godzilla's DNA in order to become a perfect clone of Godzilla. Godzilla breaks free, and then he sets Orga aflame. But then Orga reemerges from the flame, and he attempts to swallow Godzilla whole. And as Orga begins to transform, Godzilla unleashes a modified version of his nuclear pulse attack and completely vaporizes Orga's entire upper body, killing him. And then it's at this moment where we get another one of my all-time favorite moments from a Godzilla movie, is that when Godzilla kind of does the, to quote that commentary, it's like the Max Sennett gag where somebody finishes off their adversary and they're stiff, and the the surviving adversary just does like a little, and the opponent falls over, but he does a modified version where Godzilla roars and Godzilla's or not Godzilla's, but Orga's body just tumbles over and disintegrates.
Then we get my favorite scene
in
the movie.
Godzilla walks over to the rooftop where the human cast is at. However, Katagiri decides to stay behind, realizing that, hey, I've been trying to kill this thing and it's not working, but this thing is a necessary evil. So he commits harakiri via Godzilla. So Godzilla partially destroys the roof, and after uttering one last roar of triumph, he proceeds to go on a little rampage throughout the city. And Shinoda and the scientists who were observing the battle reminisce on how Godzilla was wrought by human ambition, prompting Shinoda to suggest that maybe because Godzilla is inside each one of us. And then the movie ends with Godzilla once again unleashing his atomic ray, creating literally a circle of fire. Then he looks at the screen, and then the credits roll. And an awesome ending as we get the classic Godzilla March theme playing. So moving on from there, leading into the next movie, though, hang on, I gotta look at something here.
Okay. Come on, chat. We need more people to come in here. The last video was a lot of fun, just getting all. We need KPF back.
Well, maybe people are just busy.
Yeah. I mean, it is a Sunday night. So. But normally, we should get a few more people in soon. The longer we talk, I'm sure we'll get some more. Some chats you get so many people, other ones you don't. It's weird.
Yeah, it's possible. Come on, you cocksucker. Not you, my stupid laptop is being really slow right now.
Yeah, some laptops do that. I've had plenty of laptops.
Well, so let's spark a little conversation while we're waiting. What do you think of this story for Godzilla 2000?
It's okay. Like, I think it's not necessarily the story that's the problem. I think it's the execution of it. That's my biggest issue, because it's like there's a lot of pacing problems in this movie. Like, it just like takes a nap for so long. There's not too many interesting characters except Katagiri or whatever. He's the only one I kind of enjoy in this movie because he's such an asshole, but like he just has like this pissed off look on his face the whole time. He hates like everybody. Like one of the one dad or whatever, the GPN or whatever, is in this building trying to get some shit or whatever, and the Katagiri's like, I'm gonna blow up the fucking building, which understandably
Looks
he wants
like I'll have to
to
send more flowers.
I'm like, what an asshole. What if he's acknowledging, like, what a piece of shit he is. And the one guy comes out, he's like, oh, see, no big deal. And then he has my favorite moment in the whole movie. Godzilla!
Godzilla! And then it's followed up by Shinoda going, Katagiri!
Never mind. So,
well, what I think of this story, I think it's pretty good. It's definitely a lot more simple than something we get from the Heisei series. Well, you know, some of the plots were simple in the Heisei series, but a few of them are also pretty more complicated. But I like this story. It's not too complex, but it's not like Godzilla versus Megalon simple, or it's not like what's another Godzilla movie that has a simple story?
Godzilla 2?
No, I wouldn't really. Well, Mechagodzilla 2 kind of has a simple story. There's just a lot of stuff in that story, but it's
Godzilla
not.
versus the Sea Monster.
There you go. That one probably has the simplest story. It's nothing like that, and I definitely do feel like that Toho was trying to recapture a bit more of the Showa era spirit with this movie, which I don't really have an issue with. I like the Showa era tone, and I actually do think it really works for this movie. But you know, overall, I like this story. It's overall very well executed. It's definitely, for me at least, it's definitely not boring. Shawnee Boy here strongly disagrees, but I think
I was bored. I was definitely bored.
I was not bored.
Sequences felt kind of flat. I think too a lot of it is just like they don't feel finished. Like
in the Japanese version, it's even worse.
I still haven't seen that.
Well, also for the record, we are reviewing the American version of this movie. I have seen the Japanese version, and I was not impressed. I stated in the audio commentary that I did for this movie with Hidora the Douchebag years ago that apparently the Japanese version feels like an incomplete movie, even though it's 8 minutes longer than the American version. Now that I have seen the Japanese version, I really have to agree. The Japanese version of Godzilla 2000, it does feel like a completely different movie, and it also feels like an incomplete film.
I feel like with this one too, it's like they haven't had the musical score to like the action sequences. There's no like music background, just kind of like inaudible noises, and it's like it's edited.
I don't really mind that, really. I really don't. Anyway, let's get to the plot of Megaguirus, a vastly inferior film. So the prologue of Megaguirus does acknowledge the events of the first Godzilla movie, while also inventing its own timeline, which I do like about that. I definitely do like this movie just does. The retcon nature of the beginning is both good and bad.
There's KPF.
There's KPF, yeah. Explaining that the capital of Japan was moved from Tokyo to Osaka. And the film takes place in an alternate universe with much more advanced technology, explained that in 1966, Godzilla attacked the first Japanese nuclear power plant in Tokai, Ibaraki Prefecture. And after this, a section of the Japanese self-defense force named the G-Graspers had dedicated themselves to fight Godzilla, which I don't like that name, G Graspers. Really?
Define the G spot.
Because it sounds, it makes them sound like they're grasping G's dick.
Yeah, like the G spot.
So in 1996, clean plasma energy replaced nuclear energy. However, this did not deter Godzilla from attacking, because Godzilla wants to feed on nuclear and plasma energy. This is kind of something that they bring back from the Return of Godzilla. That wasn't really brought up again in the entire Heisei series. It would have been in Biollante, but that scene got cut. So in 1996, Godzilla returns and attacks the original plasma energy reactor. And in this attack, the main character of the movie, Kiriko Tsujimori, played by Misato Tanaka, her commanding officer is killed by Godzilla in the attack. And in a scene that's a pretty freaking cringy moment with both the original Japanese dub and also the English dub, she screams as she sees Godzilla and she fires a rocket. Though it does lead into the pretty badass opening title sequence for this movie. So in 2001, an experimental satellite-based weapon is created called the Dimension Tide, which fires miniature black holes into its adversary. The black hole itself being about 6.5 feet across. However, when it's first
weapon.
Yes, when it's first created, it opens a wormhole through which a prehistoric dragonfly enters to the present, and it deposits a single egg before exiting through the wormhole back to its own timeline. And a boy finds the egg, and it takes it with him when he moves to Tokyo. The egg starts oozing a strange liquid, so the boy throws the egg into the sewer, and the egg actually is a mass of hundreds of eggs, which split up and start growing when exposed to water, hatching into large dragonfly larvae called Meganeulon, which, yes, indeed, this movie is somehow connected to the original Rodan, that come out of the sewer to feed, and they flood a massive portion of the city, and they molt on the side of buildings, becoming adult Meganeula. And meanwhile, Godzilla appears in search of a source of nuclear energy, despite the edict shutting down of all attractants after its 3 previous appearances. And while Godzilla is engaged with a minor fight with the G-Graspers, who are assisted by rebellious scientist Hajime Kudo, the swarm of Meganeula fly out to a small island called Kingajima Island, who are attracted by Godzilla when he sees the swarm, and out of curiosity he stands there for a sec. Then he decides to fire his atomic ray up into the sky and kills a couple of the Meganeula, and they swarm him. A lot of Meganeulon. And they swarm him, and they decide to use him as an energy source, and they sting him and start sucking him of his radiation power. They sucked him dry. During the course of the fight, actually, I do think this fight is pretty entertaining. The Dimension Tide is launched, however, Godzilla does survive the attack, and most of the Meganeula are killed by both Godzilla and the Dimension Tide. However, quite a few, manage to drain off some of Godzilla's energy, and they return to the sewer. And with the last of their strength, the Meganeula injected Godzilla's energy into a giant sleeping larvae that is in a pulsating cocoon. And it molts and it appears from the water as Megaguirus, the queen of the Meganeula. After destroying part of Tokyo with shockwaves generated by her wings, Megaguirus heads to the waterfront and faces Godzilla. And being territorial, Megaguirus considers this city to be her hunting ground. And as they engage, and once again, I think it's a pretty entertaining fight, she uses her speed to avoid Godzilla's attacks. However, Godzilla relies on his immense durability and uses his speed against her. And as she flies towards Godzilla, it lunges forward with its dorsal fins, with Godzilla's dorsal fins in her path, and one of her pincer arms is severed.
Stabs him
Megaguirus,
in the dick at one point.
twice. Megaguirus, once again, having been mutated by Godzilla's power, generates a blast similar to Godzilla's atomic ray and knocks Godzilla to the ground. Megaguirus then speeds forward with her stinger lowered, getting ready to stab Godzilla between the eyes. However, Godzilla manages to catch the stinger in his mouth and crush it with his jaws. Godzilla
So
finally
he's the real
manages
G-Crusher.
to Godzilla finally manages to shoot off a blast of his atomic ray to destroy Megaguirus, causing her to literally burst into flames, fall to the ground, explode, and die. Pretty awesome end to a entertaining fight, in my opinion. And then it is revealed that Godzilla was attracted to a secret plasma energy project housed in the building known as the Science Institute. This, of course, being in violation of the ban of nuclear and plasma energy. The Geograspers then continue their mission to destroy Godzilla. However, the Dimension Tide, being damaged by Megaguirus' high-frequency waves, it's falling out of orbit, and they're unable to get a lock on Godzilla. However, Kiriko Tsujimori pilots a ship called the Griffin, which is a giant Super X ripoff. She pilots the Griffin towards Godzilla, ejecting at the last minute, and then the Dimension Tide is able to lock onto the craft, and it fires one last black hole just before it burns up in re-entry of the Earth. Godzilla shoots his atomic ray at the approaching black hole with its atomic breath. However, he seemingly vanishes, but seemingly killing Godzilla. However, in an after-credit scene, Godzilla's roar is heard once again, and apparently an after effect of the Dimension Tide is temporary wormholes. And as Megaguirus came to Earth through one, as
Godzilla returns.
Yeah, Godzilla returns himself through a wormhole as well, thus ending the movie. So this plot, it's a lot more original than Godzilla 2000, and it definitely doesn't come off as being simple or too complicated, but it definitely does have a couple aspects of it that a lot of G fans would see as a massive insult to the original Godzilla movie.
One thing I noticed really quick, the ship you're talking about, the Griffin, wasn't that the name of that unused monster in like the original American Godzilla?
I don't think they intentionally used that. I think it's a coincidence that it just so happened to be named that.
I just thought of that. I'm like, oh shoot. So, you want to do pros and cons now, or each one?
Let's do pros. Let's do pros first for 2000, and then Megaguirus.
And then, okay, because that'll be easier than just going pros this way, pros that way. So, do you want to go first? You want me to go first?
How many pros do you have?
Of 2000?
Yeah, because I have 7.
Not as many as that. It's cool to see Godzilla, I guess. The atomic breath looks cool. The final battle is decent. It's not like it's mostly them just kind of standing around, not really doing much. When he blows up Orga is pretty sweet. I thought that was a great sequence. The final shot in the movie where he's got the ring of fire, I thought that was a cool way to end the film. And my favorite moment in the entire movie is where Megaguirus, or whatever his name is, he's like, Godzilla! And then he dies. So it's kind of like, it's a funnier version. Like, it's kind of like the Shindo death in Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah. Although with that one's emotional, they just troll the audience. This one is just like, it seems intensely ridiculous. But like, I still love that scene. But other than that, I don't really have too many pros because the action sequences were kind of flat for me. That's really it.
I have 7 pros for this movie. So, I really think the pro number one is I think the human cast for this movie is pretty damn good. There's no real characters in this movie that I can legitimately say I dislike, except maybe the primary female character. I forgot her name.
See what I mean? She's not memorable. I will say one thing. Some of the dub lines are pretty funny.
I'll get to that in just a second. Yeah, I guess. Yuki Ichinose, played by Naomi Nishida. She in the first half of the movie, she's pretty fucking annoying. Cause she kind of suffers from Yuki syndrome from GMK, and the fact that because she's only concerned about getting a story, she keeps putting herself in the line of danger and requiring people to save her. She's not as bad as Yuki from GMK, and she doesn't really want to be close to Godzilla. However, it's actually her asshole editor who keeps forcing her out in the field to get more Godzilla photos. And another one of my favorite lines: "Did you look at these first? These negatives are as blank as your mind. Godzilla's radiation fogged the film. Next time, don't get so close. Now go and try again."
I'd be like, what the fuck,
dude?
Like,
and she's also a real bitch towards GPN, because she follows this up with not another joyride with those freaks. Quit your bitching. Pain in the ass. Oh shit. So she does come off as a bitch at times, but in the second half of the movie, she's a lot more tolerable, in my opinion. That's just because she's learned to bond with both Shinoda and Io. So she becomes a lot more tolerable, and she gives us one of my favorite lines of the entire, not just the entire movie, but the entire Godzilla series. After Godzilla kills Orga, she says, "Boy, that's ironic. It woke up after 60 million years, and then Godzilla destroyed it the very next day." I love that line. It's kind of a okay, Captain funny. Obvious, but it is a moment of irony. That's for damn sure. So she's a mixed bag, but the rest of the cast I think is really good. Takehiro Murata as Yuji Shinoda. He's one of my favorite leading guys in all of Godzilla. He's a very intelligent man. He looks out for the rest of the people, but he can't help but have this scientific curiosity towards Godzilla, which anybody would. Any scientist who said that they're not curious about Godzilla whatsoever is a fool. Either that or they're lying. So he's a very proactive scientist. He doesn't just stand around and speak technical jargon. He does do that a couple times, but he's a very active field agent. He knows how to think on his feet. He's very good with computers. Overall, I love Shinoda. He's one of my favorite leading men in a Godzilla movie ever. Hiroshi Abe as Mitsuo Katagiri.
He's the best part of the movie.
He's an asshole. He is a total asshole. But he's still kind of fun to watch, I will admit.
Yeah. Like, he's my favorite thing. Is like, the human cast, because he's such an asshole, he really stands out.
Yeah.
And he gets his comeuppance, too. So they build
he gets one.
And he gets it bad, and it's amazing.
He's probably my second favorite human villain in any Godzilla movie. He's barely behind both Terahata and Kumayama from Mothra vs. Godzilla. Though he does get a better comeuppance than those two do in this movie, in my opinion. Because at least here, Godzilla is knowingly killing this guy. Whereas in Mothra vs. Godzilla, Godzilla had no idea that those two just so happened to be in that building when he was walking around.
And you're saying human villain, not like alien, right?
No, like pure human. My favorite like humanoid villain of all time is still the Exilians from Final Wars. But as far as like pure human villain is concerned, Katagiri is one of my favorites.
No, he's pretty good. Like, because human villains, it's like, I still think Torosh and Kumiyama #1, and then I guess this guy #2. In terms of human villains, humanoid like Alien-esque, he's still a little bit further down because I still like the simians from the original Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, and then like the Exilian leader from Final Wars. Those are like my top two, like humanoid alien type, and then like you'd have the cockroach people below them and such.
And let's see. So he also does a really good job of acting the character. He doesn't feel miscast. He doesn't feel forced. He does a really good job. He has a lot of really good facial expressions. Like oftentimes he'll look at something with just a cold stare.
No, that's what makes him, I think, really stand out the most is his facial expressions, because he's able. I think with his facial expressions, you don't need like to like understand the language to understand that. If you know what I mean, he doesn't have to speak it. He can tell a lot with visuals without saying anything. I think that showcases a good actor when you can showcase things universally. It's like slapstick. Slapstick is universal, like slapstick comedy.
Yeah.
Like people in pain. That's universal. You don't have to be. Anybody can understand that. So like universally, you can tell what he's thinking, what he's doing with his facial expressions. That's one of the reasons he stands out more. Like he just looks pissed off the whole time. He's just like, fucking people, god damn it. And he's cold-hearted. Well, I guess they'll have to send some more flowers.
Looks like I'll have to send more flowers. The dubber also does a really good job for his character as well.
The dubber stands out a lot. Like the dubber did a good job with him. Like I said, like he's the only like human character in the movie I enjoy. Like the lead is okay to me. Like him and his daughter are fine. Like
the only bad line of dialogue. Well, no, I'll save that for when I get to the cons. Shiro Sano as Shiro Miyasaka. Miyasaka is a pretty good character too. He might be my second favorite character in this movie because at first he's on the side because he himself works for the CCI. At first he's on Katagiri's side. But then as the movie goes on, because it's established that he and Shinoda are old friends, as the movie goes on, Miyasaka begins to side more with Shinoda. And so that's a really nice thing to. God damn it, Sean! Really? So Shiro Sano, he acts very well as Miyasaka. He's a very entertaining character. He's very well written too. He's not he's got a couple lines that make him just come off to be a little annoying. Miyasaka's a really fun character. And the last of the human cast that I want to talk about. Hey, Big Jack Films is here. We're still talking about the pros for Godzilla 2000. Actually, we just started. Yeah. The last human character that I want to talk about is Mayu Suzuki as Io Shinoda, Shinoda's daughter. I infamously do not like child characters in kaiju movies, especially when I get to the Gamera movies again. I'm going to really have a tough time through that franchise. Can't deny, though, Mayu Suzuki as Io, she's fantastic. She's not annoying. She's not a damsel in distress. She's not somebody that needs to be saved. Io is fantastic. Yeah, you binge watch your Land Before Time sequels, Jackie boy there. Anyway, so...
yeah. Did you watch the Land Before Time movies?
Io is really good. She's her dub actress also does a really good job as Io. Io is a very enjoyable child character, and I infamously do not like child characters in movies, not just in kaiju movies, but just in movies in general. But Io's a good child character. One of like a small handful of child characters I can say are good. So that I think the human cast is fantastic. I'm glad that it's not a huge ensemble of characters. It's a lot smaller here, so they're allowed to expand on a lot more of these characters a lot more. So that's awesome. Pro number 2, I guess you could say like a pro like 1.5 is that this movie, despite some cringy dialogue, this movie has a pretty good dub. In fact, I may have to say this is probably my favorite English dub for a Godzilla movie ever. It's got some competition with the dub for Mothra vs. Godzilla.
I still think
and
that's the best dub.
and also Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2. That one has a really, really, really good English dub. But I
The
think
original Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, damn that Godzilla. At least
that
guy.
too. And also, of course, this movie's dub. I think this might be my favorite dub ever.
Great Caesars, go!
I'll get to that in a minute. But pro number 2 is I think the music score for this movie is pretty damn good. It's not amazing. There are a lot of times where the music score for this movie is very, very generic.
Oh yeah.
But the music here was done by Takayuki Hattori, who, as you stated, also did the score for Space Godzilla and is also currently still working on the anime Godzilla trilogy.
And we don't have classic Godzilla music in that anime trilogy, and it's pissing me off.
I didn't think so. Well, maybe they're saving it for the last movie, but who knows?
They better damn well save it for that last one. I'm just.
Hattori's score is definitely a lot better in this movie than it is in Space Godzilla. As I stated there,
I disagree. I at least can remember some things from Space Godzilla, and he at least includes more classic music.
For me, oh, KPF, I liked Pacific Rim 2. I liked it more than the first movie.
Whoa! I'm just finding this out now. I completely disagree. The Independence Day Resurgence. Yeah, Brian and I were bored, and we watched.
You spelled bored wrong, Jack. Anyway, so I think Hattori's score is better in this movie than it is in in Space Godzilla. In Space Godzilla, I didn't think any of the music worked whatsoever for that movie. Here, I think a lot of this movie's music does work for the scene that's playing over. Even though, yes, I did say that there are times where the music score does sound pretty fucking generic, I still think it's good. It's not terrible. It's not like the... God, what's a Godzilla movie that I think has a bad score?
This one is pretty lacking for me. Because I'm thinking Showa, there's no like.
Well, okay, 2014 doesn't have the greatest score either.
2014 is a phenomenal score. I think it's fantastic.
Nah, we'll get to that later, but so overall, the music is good, but it's not one of the greatest Godzilla movie scores ever. Not even remotely. Shut up, Jack. Fucking Pinky in the Brain.
The Pinky and the Brain. The Pinky and the Brain.
I'm gonna smack you.
One is a genius, the other's insane.
Pro number 3 is I think this movie has great pacing. I've said this before, I don't like a slow pace. But this one, the slow pace works. It's not like, let's see, what's a movie that has a really, really slow pace?
Slow pace in Godzilla?
Yeah. Okay, yeah, Megaguirus has a slow pace. Well, I wouldn't say it's slow, it's just really, really sloppy, but, this movie, in my opinion, the slower pace for this movie works a lot. Oh, Godzilla 2014 has a slow pace too, and there I think it works for the most part, but it has its problems here and there. But
yeah, the first act is good, and then it drags in that second act. But the third act,
yeah, then the third act picks up again. It kind of it suffers from King Kong escape syndrome, but that's neither here nor there. I think the pacing for this movie is a lot better, in my opinion. It's very, it's a lot slower in a lot of areas. It does have its moments where it's cinematically paced, but overall, I think this movie has a slower pace than most Godzilla movies, and here it works. Because there's this atmosphere of mystery surrounding it, which I really do like. Pro number 4 is is Godzilla himself. I love this version of Godzilla. And the design-wise, I'm not crazy about the Mirai Goji suit, as it's known as much as I used to. Like, guy I knew, his name is Grayson. Yeah, it was Grayson. This is Grayson's favorite Godzilla design. And I can kind of see why. And I used to be JT should look at the Land Before Time. Oh
Come on,
no!
let's go, and run around. What a beautiful feeling. See, I know the Land Before Time songs pretty well for 2. 3 I didn't see till years later. I had 4 on VHS.
Neither here nor
God
there.
damn it, you got me Land Before Timing right now. I gotta stop.
Fuck, Jack. And I should have bought the Land Before Time series on Amazon yesterday.
Hey, I bought it on DVD at Best Buy for $5.
You asshole. I gotta spend $32. Shut up.
Oh, man. 2 has, like, Ozzy and Strut. God, I love those 2 so much.
Anyway, I love this version of Godzilla. Like I said, the mirror goatee, I'm not as big a fan of it as I used to be.
Ugly suit.
I like the way that it's shaped. Like, I like that Godzilla has longer arms. He's much more upright in his... Well, no, he's not quite as upright as he is. It's clear that he's very back heavy.
Yes, KPF.
Wait, what?
Watch it.
For your 200 subscriber celebration, live stream yourself watching King Kong vs. Godzilla on repeat for 12 hours. I would rather cut my dick off with this machete on my bed right here.
It'd be like the Pain Olympics.
That is never going to happen. Oh, yeah, like Jack says, Godzilla has a great opening in this movie where the camera slowly zooms in on what appears to be a ship, but it's in the mouth of Godzilla, and then the camera settles on Godzilla's eye, and then his eye opens, and then we see the title screen over Godzilla's roar. And then there's also another scene where Godzilla is silhouetted in fire and smoke. That is a great shot. And I love Godzilla's roar in this film, too. This is my favorite Godzilla roar.
It's the 98 roar.
No, it's not.
Yeah, a lot of it's the 98 roar.
A lot of it is in the American version. They do reuse the 98 Godzilla roar for some reason. But the actual Millennium Godzilla roar, I love it. It's very long. It's very deep and echoey and bellowy. I love this version of the Godzilla roar. And they use it for the rest of the series until Final Wars. However, I think it's at its best in this movie. It's at its worst in GMK. I don't think this roar fits that Godzilla design. Oh, and they also use it in the Monster Planet trilogy, too. Do they?
Yeah, they do use it.
Okay, I thought so. Anyway, so yeah. I love Godzilla's roar. My only issue with Godzilla's design in this movie is that I think his spines are way too big.
Yeah, his spine and that face.
They look great. I actually do like Godzilla's face. It's a lot more crocodilian in nature, and I like his larger teeth, but his spines I think are a little too big. If you want to do the craggly, pointy spines, the X Mechagodzilla and Tokyo SOS design does that a lot better. They're not as big, but they're similar enough in nature where Godzilla wants to look imposing, but they're slimmed down quite a bit, and Godzilla looks much more lightweight. Here, Godzilla looks very back-heavy. So that's the problem. I like my Godzilla to be a pretty perfectly physical, if that makes any sense. Like, I like his physique to be perfect. This is why Final Wars Goji is my favorite Godzilla design. I'll get to that when I get to Final Wars.
That's a great suit.
Yes. That's all I'll say about it for now. But I also love Godzilla's personality. He doesn't really seem to be like that much of an angry creature. Well, he does, but he just kind of seems like he shows up to Japan just to destroy. I don't know. Godzilla's kind of complicated in this movie, for me at least. Hang on. I'll make an X-rated cut of the... Oh, God. That'd be nice to see.
Oh, Jesus.
But I really like Godzilla's personality in this movie. And to quote Bill from his Godzilla Palooza, he acts like a child who's disowned his parents. And I have to agree. The way Godzilla acts in this movie is kind of hard to explain. And I also do like that he doesn't really save the world for the humans. He saves the world because, hey, I still live on this planet too. Kind of like with the Heisei series, in around the middle ground, but still. Um, I love Godzilla in this movie. I absolutely love Godzilla. And I also love the red atomic breath. Oh my god, the red atomic breath is so awesome. It looks a lot better in this movie than it does in the next. Um, but I love the red atomic ray. It looks so freaking cool. Let's see. Pro number, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I love the military fight scenes with Godzilla in this movie. I think they're really well done, very entertaining. Effects wise, I think they're pulled off pretty well. There's a couple shoddy green screen effects.
CGI, the green screen
Oh, that too.
Looks bad.
The green screen effects and the CG do look pretty bad, but the practical stuff looks great. There are a couple okay composite shots, but other than that, I think the practical stuff looks really good. And watching the military systematically just unleash everything they have upon Godzilla, it's really entertaining to watch, in my opinion. It gets my blood going every time I see it. Yeah, I think the military fight scenes are really, really entertaining. About as good as Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla 2. Let's see, 1, 2, 3. 6 is the monster action in this movie. I also think is pretty damn entertaining. And pro number 6, the monster action. It's very well choreographed. The effects are pulled off are very well done. Contrary to popular belief, Sean, I think the Godzilla versus Orga fight is very, very well done. It's nothing really too special, to be 100% honest. It is still entertaining, for my taste at least. It's decent.
That are entertaining.
It's decently long too. It's not over way too short. It definitely feels like a climactic end fight, and it doesn't feel rushed or too one-sided or anything. I think Orga and Godzilla are pretty evenly matched. And also when Godzilla kills Orga in the modified Ultra Dynamite nuclear explosion, oh my god, is it so awesome. I would have loved to see this movie in theaters. Or watch this movie with a really good sound system and just have my balls blown off again. The monster action in this movie is so goddamn entertaining. And the last pro that I have is that the special effects, for the most part, I'll get to that in a minute. I think the special effects are pretty damn great. The miniatures are well done. The city sets are very well made. They're very well detailed. Godzilla's size is brought down a lot more from the Heisei series this time. Godzilla reached his peak height in the Heisei series at 100 meters. Here they brought Godzilla's size back down to 55 meters. And honestly, I don't have an issue with that. I never really noticed when I was a kid, because you still get the sense that Godzilla is fucking gigantic. But they brought down Godzilla's size once again, and I really do like that. Because it allows the special effects team to make the cities a lot more well detailed, and I think it works. The beam effects for Orga's concussive ray, the ship's concussive ray, and Godzilla's atomic breath look great, and also when his spines light up is an awesome spectacle. Another one of my favorite scenes is when Godzilla's wrapped up with a whole bunch of cables by the UFO. When he lights up his spines, they start to heat up, and the coil and the cables melt away. Then there's one around his mouth that heats, and then heats up, and then it melts away. Then he unleashes atomic ray. It's an awesome scene. The effects there look great. Or the Orga suit looks really good too. I feel so bad for the suit actor, because you know damn well that the Orga suit had to be hellishly top heavy.
Oh god, that thing looks like, I can't move my arms, you guys.
And he was also played by Makoto Ito, who played Grand King Ghidorah in Rebirth of Mothra 3. A little bit of trivia there. But the Orga suit looks very, very, very good. It's very well detailed. It's very well constructed. It just looks awesome. And overall, the effects for this movie, 99% of the time, they look, well, 98% of the time, they look great. And also, pro number 8, this is the last pro that I have, is, and this mainly has to do with the DVD and Blu-ray. This movie has a fantastic audio commentary. I love the audio commentary for Godzilla 2000. It's very informative, very interesting to listen to. It's chock full of information. If you want to listen to a really good Godzilla audio commentary, there's not that many. Listen to the Godzilla 2000 audio commentary. It's really, really entertaining. So with that said, let's move on to the pros of Godzilla versus Megaguirus, because that won't take long. Go ahead, Sean.
All right. The musical score is excellent. I think that musical score for this film is one of the best in the Godzilla series. It's such an iconic theme.
Dun dun. Dun dun dun.
Dun, 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 dun. Like, it's great. I think the musical score is great. I think Megaguirus is kind of like, as a villain, like fighting Godzilla.
She has a good design.
Humanistic. Yeah, has a good design. In the Meganulon form, or whatever, like her first form, like she straight up starts murdering people. Like the little Meganulons or whatever start murdering people. There's a fucking Japanese horror graphic R-rated scene there where somebody's head is getting like crushed. I'm like, Jesus Christ, what the fuck is this?
Koji, I got your beer here. Koji.
There are some funny moments too with the Godzilla body slam. I thought that was pretty cool. The idea of the plot is kind of clever with the device that they used to take out Godzilla, this black hole device. I thought that was definitely something unique and interesting because they're just like, look, why don't we just take Godzilla and push him over there, as Patrick would say in SpongeBob. Let's push him over there. So that was kind of funny. The fight scene is pretty brutal. I think a lot more brutal than the Orga fight scene with like the damage that is done to Godzilla. Godzilla gets stabbed right in the dick like, multiple
Twice.
times. Like Orga sticks it just right inside him. I'm like, Jesus Christ, lady, rape.
You mean Megaguirus?
God, oh yeah, Megaguirus. Yeah, because Orga was taking it. Megaguirus was giving it to Godzilla.
Well, Megaguirus was giving it and taking it.
Yeah, kind of. Like she was into it. It was weird, but Godzilla's eyes just like, oh my god. That was pretty graphic. I was like, oh good god. It reminds me of like Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster where Godzilla gets zapped in the balls. If he has any, I don't know. But anyways,
it's probably tucked in like an alligator.
We have to talk about the anatomy of Godzilla now.
No, we don't. Let's not. Shut it.
You know what? The internet, I'm sure, has something on that. I wouldn't doubt it. But anyways, what else? The body slam sequence was really funny. Like where he jumps up in the air and he just crashes on me. That scene was great. What else can I say? Megaguirus. The fight scene is cool. I did like the fight scene a bit more in the Megaguirus one than I did because it definitely got a little bit more brutal and hardcore. The way Megaguirus blows up is pretty cool, although not as cool as when Orga blew up.
No.
I'll say that. Not as cool as that. But Godzilla getting taken out, the way it kind of sets itself up for like an after credit scene, I think that's the first Godzilla film to have an after credit scene. So that was a bit different.
Yeah, it is.
Is unique, but some horror elements here and there. But other than that, I can't really think of any more positives.
I have 3 pros for Godzilla vs. Megaguirus, so you're not alone. As you said, pro number 1 is that the music score for this movie is great. Let's see, who did the music for this?
It was some girl, I forget her name.
Michiru Oshima.
She's the score for Tokyo SOS and Godzilla Against Mechagodzilla.
Yep.
I recall.
She did a fantastic job for the music score. She does use some Akira Ifukube tracks here and there for this movie, but for the most part, it's her own original score. I think it's really, really, really good. I love the music score for this movie, especially listen to it on a really good sound system. It'll rock your world. I love the music score for this movie. if Godzilla was to have a secondary theme, I definitely think it would be from this movie.
Yeah, it's a phenomenal score,
yes.
one of the best of all.
Great really, music
from this
score.
point on, where the Millennium series had great music, like even like had different composers, like this one. I know you're not the biggest GMK fan, but that score is really.
I like
really
the score
good.
for GMK. It's one of the few good things I have to say about that movie.
That score is one of my favorites. I don't know, like I like this score too. Like it depends on the mood I'm in. Sometimes I like the GMK score more than this one, but both are incredible scores. Like this one is they reused this one, the main theme for I think it was Tokyo SOS. They reused this one because Godzilla against Mechagodzilla tweaked it up a bit, but still great music all around. Like I said, the most consistently good thing in the Godzilla series is the music. So.
Alrighty. So pro number 2 is that the special effects, they're a lot worse in this movie, but they're still fairly decent. Like this isn't like Godzilla versus Megalon levels of bad.
I don't know,
because I'm actually gonna go on. I'm actually gonna go on a limb and say I think Godzilla vs. Megalon has the overall worst special effects of the entire Godzilla franchise. It's got some competition. I am aware. Some people probably say Raids Again has the worst special effects. Part of me probably agrees, but I really don't mind the effects in that movie. But
this one has some really bad CGI though.
Yeah, the CG in this movie is pretty fucking terrible. It doesn't look finished. It looks like a cutscene straight out of Godzilla Save the Earth. The CG missiles look like shit. The only CG that looks good is Godzilla's atomic ray. But then again, that's pretty standard. Yeah. It's supposed to look fake because it.
Yeah, they were able to get that right.
It's a beam. They always get that right.
Yeah.
And when Megaguirus is flying around at high frequency speeds, it's very obvious. It looked not really very obvious, but I think it's a cardboard cutout that they just kind of digitally move her wings around. Doesn't look that good.
Yeah, it's like when they shifted Harrison Ford's head in like the special edition. It looks that bad.
So. Yeah, it looks pretty damn shitty. The CG. Oh, and also the CG effects for the Meganeura don't look that good either.
Yeah, like I said, there's just some bad special effects in these two Millennium
But movies. The suitimation isn't bad. The Godzilla suit itself, it's the same suit from the previous movie. However, it's shot a lot more plainly. And this is something I noticed. In Godzilla 2000, the Megaguirus suit, it actually is green. However, in Godzilla 2000, it looks like it's a very, very, very dull shade of green. Like it's like leaf stem green, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
The Megaguirus in this movie is a much brighter shade of green. I don't know if that's because they shot a lot of the previous movie in the dark, or it's because they spray painted it a brighter shade of green.
Well, that could be it.
I don't know. But the suit,
like the poster, like I'm looking at, it doesn't look green. It looks kind of blackish, like a dark gray. So with purple. So.
Oh, and its spines are purple. I do like that. Purple and green go together very well. But the suit definitely looks a lot worse. That's just because it's shot a lot more plainly in this movie than it was in the previous movie. But the suitimation is good. The sets are quite well constructed, and the monster. I'll get to that in a minute. The Megaguirus puppet. It's a puppet / animatronic. It looks good, but there's one really infamous scene where Megaguirus first appears when she starts flying around the flooded Shinjuku. I think no, it's not Shinjuku. It's a city, and you can see clearly see the strings on Megaguirus.
They could have just CGI'd that out.
They could have just simply removed them, but I don't know why they didn't. Because I remember I was watching this with my stepdad once, and that scene showed up, and his TV was much better than mine, and I could see the strings, and he said, "I see the strings." That's so phony. And I said, yeah, I didn't realize that until now. That does look pretty crappy. Guys, dudes, you fucked up with not taking the strings out. What the hell? Why didn't you have that in mind when you knew that this was going to be a puppet / animatronic thing?
Yeah, it's just.
But Megaguirus herself, I like her design. She's She definitely looks like a hybrid of reptilian and insectoid-like features. But I'll get
Mm-hmm.
to Megaguirus in a few minutes.
Okay.
Um, and pro number 3 is I do think the monster battles in this movie are pretty fun. There's really only two: Godzilla's fight with the swarm of Meganeira, and then there's his actual fight with Megaguirus. They're both fairly long. They don't really feel stale. They don't drag on way too long. I'd say they're fairly entertaining.
Mm-hmm.
But also at the same time, Godzilla versus Megaguirus fight itself, it also does feel kind of stale because we've seen Godzilla fight a flying kaiju before, so this
Mm-hmm.
doesn't feel new in any sense of in any way, shape, or form at all. But it's still entertaining nonetheless, in my opinion. So let's get to the cons of Godzilla 2000, shall we? Go ahead, Sean.
All right, Godzilla 2000 cons. I have a lot of cons.
I gotta stand up for a minute. I'll be right back.
Let's go over all my cons. So the movie is pretty boring for the most part. I mean, it definitely really drags after Godzilla's first appearance. The Godzilla suit, the 2000 suit, looks bad. It's really plasticky looking. The face looks like he's getting a facelift. It's too much going on there. Like, it's too spiky, I'd say. The dorsal fins are too huge. It just looks bad. Like the way it's shot and everything, there's something about it that just feels off. A lot of the CGI and green screen effects look pretty terrible. And not like in a charming, funny way, but just in like that looks gross and like mediocre. Shit, like the pacing problems, it just drags on for way too long. The action sequences aren't like really that great. There's the way they're edited together, like the pacing just feels meticulously slow. The musical score isn't the best. I do think like it's definitely this composer who composed this one, who composed Godzilla for Space Godzilla in the anime trilogy. It's definitely like his weakest. The only good music in the movie is the classic Akara Ifukube score that appears at like the end of the film. The human characters are okay. Nothing too special, although I do like the one guy.
Except
Katagiri. But I'm trying to think of any others off the top of my head. I'm just not too big a fan of this one, as you can tell. It's not one I ever really go back to. It feels kind of like a chore to watch. The English dub has some funny moments, but some of them are pretty cringy. And I haven't seen the Japanese version, so I can't, watch it. But it does, like, the biggest issue I think with this movie is, like, it feels incomplete. It feels like I'm missing something. Like, it's not fully rendered, like, the special effects-wise, the music hasn't been added in. It feels like an unfinished film. I think if this movie was re-edited, it could salvage it a bit more. But because of the way it's paced, the way it's edited together, it feels kind of rushed, like unfinished effects-wise. Like I said, the action sequences between Godzilla and Orga are relatively flat. They don't really like have much combat. It's not like a beam spam like in the Heisei series. It's not like more like brutal, like in your face combat like Godzilla versus like Gigan. It's just they're not doing much at all in the way of these fight scenes. So, and just kind of it's just not doing it for me. And I think the thing I don't know what I dislike the most. A lot of it has to do with that Godzilla suit. I don't like the way it looks. And yeah, I think I said pretty much a good gist of like all the things I dislike about the movie. It's just not one of my favorites. It's one of my like least favorite Godzilla films. So go ahead and take over, Nick. I'll be right back.
Alrighty, so my cons for Godzilla 2000, I have 3. Most of them have to do with the special effects. The CG effects in this movie, yeah, they look pretty damn shitty. I will give them a slight pass because this was the first time that Toho ever used CG for a Godzilla movie, and CG for them was still relatively new at the time. The first kaiju movie I can think of where it wasn't specifically Toho, but it was a Japanese kaiju movie that used CG in its special effects was Gamera Guardian of the Universe. And there the CG looked pretty shitty. It was also used in Gamera 2, Advent of Legion. The CG there looked pretty shitty as well. And it looked passable in Gamera 3, Advent of Legion, which this movie technically the Japanese version of this movie came out the same year as Gamera 3, but I think it came before this movie, but still, regardless. The CG here does not look very good. The only CG that does look good is Godzilla's atomic ray. But the other CG effects, like the CG missiles, they do kind of stick out like a sore thumb. When there's a shot when Godzilla is swimming underwater as he's swimming towards the city, he swims past the camera and he like roars underwater. That looks pretty fucking bad. It has not held up and aged well whatsoever. The CG used for the alien millennial before it turns into Orga looks pretty damn bad. It looks very, very, very cartoony. Definitely not in a good way either. It definitely does stick out like a sore thumb and has not aged well. And also the CG that's used when Orga is healing his wounds sticks out like a sore thumb, and once again looks very cartoony and very just poor. The only CG that I think looks aside from Godzilla's atomic breath, the only CG that I think looks okay is when Orga opens up his super extends his mouth and he tries to swallow Godzilla. That looks fine because it looks grotesque and alien, so I think it actually works to make it look a lot more shocking. But overall, the CG effects used. Oh, and there's also CG used when Orga bites down on Godzilla's arm and he starts to try to morph himself into a Godzilla clone. That looks pretty damn cartoony as well. Yeah, the CG effects for this movie do not look good at all, except for Godzilla's atomic ray and Orga's inner mouth. Con number 2 is that the green screen effects for this movie are also pretty fucking terrible too. Especially if you watch this on Blu-ray, they really do not hold up well. They stick out like a sore thumb. They definitely look like 90s green screen effects. Like they look like 90s green screen effects you'd see in a 90s sitcom. They look that bad. They stick like a sore thumb. They have not aged well whatsoever. The green screen effects look terrible. And con number 3 is, yes, as we've kind of alluded to, while this movie's English dub is still very good, it does have some cringy lines in it. Probably the most famous being when the UFO is flying over Shinjuku, and the asshole editor of the reporter chick's company, he sees it in his mirror as he's plucking his nose hairs, and he says, "Great Caesar's ghost!" Whoa. I mean, it's funny, but damn, is it terrible. Absolutely terrible. Yeah. And there's a couple other pretty bad lines of dialogue. Can't really name any off the top of my head, but yeah, there's some pretty bad, cringy lines of dialogue in this movie. Yeah, but still, the dub is pretty is.
Go ahead and give the cons, Nick. I'll save mine for last.
Okay, good. You're still here.
No, I'm still here. I have to take care of something, so I can still hear you. Just go ahead and give your cons. I'm listening.
Did you shut your camera off?
Yeah, I shut my camera off for a second. Just I'm in another room, so.
Oh, okay.
All right.
Anyway, so the cons for Megaguirus. This is a much longer list. This movie is not paced very well at all. The first 20 minutes or so, they're paced relatively fine. But then, for the rest of the first act and a lot of the second act, oh my god, does this movie drag like nobody's business. A lot of times I really have to struggle to sit through this movie for most of its second act. It picks up a bit when Godzilla has its encounter with the swarm of Meganulas, so that's fine. It drags again after that scene, but nowhere near as long. And then once Megaguirus shows up, the movie is moderately well paced for the rest of that, and it's only about like 32 minutes or so. But this movie is very unevenly paced, and it really, really is detrimental to the film. Con number 2, this will set a trend for the rest of the Millennium series leading up to Final Wars. This movie has a pretty fucking boring ass cast. The only notable exception is we get a returning Showa era actress, Yuriko Hoshi, who played Junko and Naoko in Mothra vs. Godzilla and Ghidorah Three-Headed Monster. She's good in this movie, but outside of her, the rest of the human cast are pretty fucking damn boring. Nothing much to say about them. They're just all bland military and scientist and bratty, defiant civilian archetypes. They're nothing special. They're all boring. All they're special. The human cast for this movie suck pretty damn hard. Con number 3 is I don't like the ending to this movie. It's a massive tease. I wish we could have just gotten a scene. I wish we kind of could have gotten like a downer ending where even after locking onto Godzilla with the Dimension Tide, once the dust settles, they realize Godzilla's still alive? And as Godzilla walks back out to sea, the humans say to themselves, God, if we can't kill them, who will? And then the movie just ends there. I would have much rather preferred that. But no, this movie ends the way that it does, and I don't like this movie's ending. It's a massive tease. I don't like teaser endings. Con number 5, no, yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4 is Megaguirus herself. I like her design, but aside from that, she's a very bland monster. She suffers from insect kaiju syndrome, where a lot of insect kaiju are pretty fucking bland. They don't really have much of a personality. It's kind of hard for them to do that because insects don't really have personalities except for Mothra, but even then. Megaguirus, she's as bland can get, in my opinion. And she's also a complete glass cannon. The only thing that she has on her side is a speed advantage. Other than that, Godzilla has every single advantage you can name, and then some. And con number 5 is that, no pun intended, but this movie it's a massive retcon to the original Godzilla, because I feel like this movie strongly implies that the oxygen destroyer was never employed against Godzilla in 1954. I feel like this is the original Godzilla that attacked in 54, came back in 66, again in 96, and then again in 2001. This is the same Godzilla that we've had for the last 40 years. And that's a pretty contradictory, if you ask me. So that's really all I have to say about Megaguirus and 2000. Sean, you want to take over?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and list some of my cons. With this movie, a lot of it too is the pacing. It definitely a lot of it is pretty boring. I'm not gonna lie. This in 2000 suffered from that same problem. That a lot of the movie, it's just fucking boring. It's like the Godzilla stuff is usually pretty cool. I don't like this suit. I've gone on to say this is one of my least favorite Godzilla suits, and it's one of the things I dislike. Probably dislike the most about the Millennium series is the suits for the most part. Outside of GMK and especially Final Wars, which is a great Godzilla suit, one of the best. The Godzilla suit just looks bad. Like the way it's lit, the way it's shot, like the face just looks. It looks. I mean, we know it's a guy in a suit, but it just looks like shit. Like the way it's shot and everything, it looks plasticky. Like the texture doesn't look right. It just looks really cheap. I guess that's the way to say it. The show scene, it just like I don't know what it was. It was like the texture about it like really worked on screen, especially like the way it was shot. There's some bad special effects, like especially the scene where the girl rides Godzilla. Now that's a cool idea,
cool idea, but really poorly executed special effects.
Oh my gosh, it looks like somebody like me putting like I don't know, like I could do something better, and I don't have like.
Not to mention, it completely defies logic because she would have had a massive case of cancer within days after touching him.
Yeah, like, I mean, that was something different, like the radiation thing, unless he has it contained in him or something. I don't fucking know. Like I said, the effects are bad. There's pacing issues. The human characters, I don't fucking remember any of them. They're so forgettable and bland. Like, do you remember anyone? I know there was a kid. At least 2000 had Katagiri. Um, but, like, the characters in this one are so forgettable. They can't carry the movie when it's not Godzilla at all. Like I said, like Megaguirus as an opponent, not very intimidating. Like, I mean, we see, like, as soon as I see the poster, I'm like, this thing looks weak as fuck compared to Godzilla. Like you said, like the speed advantage, that's about it. I'm like, how am I supposed to believe this is an imposing figure towards Godzilla? You know what I
Yep.
mean? I mean, if they had like maybe Rodan or something, I could buy it a little bit more if they like retweet things. And this also starts to showcase maybe a little bit of a problem in the Godzilla Millennium series, in that every single movie just seemed like its own direct sequel, no real continuity.
Yeah,
Which
this is the
that, I guess I
beginning
could
of
result.
Godzilla anthology.
Yeah, I guess it'd be kind of more like an Elseworlds Godzilla story. Then I can accept it more. But just one of the things I didn't really like about the Millennium series, it was constantly rebooting like each movie like afterwards, and then they never follow up on things. Like, we never got to follow up on the post credit scene. This one, we never got to follow up on the post credit scene in Tokyo SOS, and then they just reboot again, with it just being a direct sequel to the original. I'm just like, I would have preferred a little bit of consistency, or maybe continue the Heisei series. That
Yeah,
would have been cool.
Toho.
Yeah, like fucking A, like Godzilla vs. Destroyer has that ending where it's just like they tease his son and all that, and then we just go on and get nothing. You get nothing. You lose. Good day, sir. So that's another one of my cons. Like, Megaguirus isn't too powerful of an opponent for Godzilla. And yeah, like I said, special effects issues, pacing issues, character issues. There are some, and a cock tease type ending. But I think I still like would give this one. I was more entertained by this one than I was for Godzilla 2000. It doesn't mean this is one of my favorites. I think what carries this one more, there's some creepy horror elements to it. The action sequences are a bit more fun in some ways. There's some garbage CGI in there, and some of the horror elements, and the musical score, I think, carried me more through this movie than did the last one too. Even though I'm not a huge fan of this one in particular, it is quite boring for a lot of it. But upon rewatching this in 2000, like in a similar time frame, I preferred this one just slightly more. But again, it's like I said, the first two Millennium series films were really lacking for me. And then like from like after this point on, I really enjoyed the Millennium series, but it's just these first two that just aren't doing it for me. So those are my cons.
And that's really all I have to say about both of these movies. Rating for Godzilla 2000. Despite this movie's minor flaws, I love the crap out of this movie, and despite what Shawnee Boy says, no opinion matters other than mine on my channel. I'm just kidding. But I'm gonna give Godzilla 2000 a perfect 10 out of 10. I love this movie very much. It's one of my favorite Godzilla movies of all time. I love the living shit out of this movie, and I love it more every time I watch it. And I still recommend that you watch this movie with audio commentary. It is really, really, really enjoyable commentary. And as for Megaguirus, I don't hate this movie, but it definitely, I would say it's not my least favorite of the Millennium series. That's the next film. But objectively, I definitely would say it's the worst of the Millennium series. But I do enjoy the film. It's a guilty pleasure. There's some scenes in it I like. So I'm gonna give it a 6 out of 10. It definitely is one of my least favorite Godzilla movies, but there's things about it I like.
Oh boy.
So with all that said,
let's give my rating. What did I give Battle for Earth? What do you think I gave that one? I can't remember.
I don't remember. I think you gave it like a. I think you maybe gave it a 5 or so.
All right, and I just like this movie more than I do Battle for Earth, Godzilla 2000. So I'm gonna get, and I think I prefer Battle for Earth more than like these first two Millennium films, because at least I have like a better looking Godzilla, better musical score, better action sequences, and I'd rather take the characters in that movie over these two, because at least I kind of like, at least they have the cosmos and stuff. I'd rather watch that. I'd rather watch it. Better looking effects because they don't have garbage CGI in the film. A lot more practicality. So, Battle for Earth, I think I gave a 5. Godzilla 2000, I'm going to give maybe a 4 out of 10. It's definitely one of my least favorite films in the Godzilla series. Oh yeah, go ahead, flip me off. Give me both middle fingers while you're at it. Give me both. Come on. Let's see them both. Come on. Bring it. Bring it. Bring it. So, yeah. So, I guess a 4 out of 10 for me in Godzilla 2000, and then a 4.5 out of 10 for Godzilla vs. Megaguirus. They're both two of the weakest Godzilla films in the entire franchise. Godzilla 2000 is right near the bottom, I think, in terms of like Godzilla films for me. So, but yeah, I mean, I gave my reasons. I'm just like pacing issues. They really drag. The Godzilla suit looks ugly. It's just not doing it for me. The one after this is one of my all-time favorites. I know you. All right, later, everyone.